Welcome to Stories from the Mat with Jan, a quiet place for families, educators and experts to come together and build confident learners from the very beginning. I'm Jan. Let's begin. What does enough look like? After our conversation with children's author Linda Murphy, I found myself thinking about a question that, if I'm honest, I've been asking myself quite a lot recently. What does enough really look like? Welcome to Stories from the Mat with Jan. I'm Jan. I'm a wife, a mother, sister, a cousin, an aunt, a nonna, a children's author, and someone who's spent a lifetime watching children learn. Since the last episode, I've thought about Linda's beautiful picture book, Olli's Cave of Treasures. On the surface, it's a story about an octopus who loves collecting treasures. His cave becomes so full that he can no longer find the things that matter most. His favourite blanket disappears beneath the piles, and he no longer has room to whirl and twirl in his cosy coral cave. It's a delightful story for children, but I discovered something rather unexpected. It actually spoke to me just as powerfully. Over the past few months, you see, my husband and I have been preparing for another move. That's meant opening up cupboards, sorting shelves, deciding what stays and what goes, and what can be passed to someone else. It's been surprisingly emotional, and I've done quite a few moves, but I've realised just how many things I own that I simply don't need. Some hold precious memories. Others I bought but now are sadly redundant. And then there are those things that remind me of a period of my life when I believed that buying something new might somehow make me happier. But it never really did. The pleasure was real enough, but it didn't last. The things that stayed with me have been the people I love, the experiences we've shared, the books I've written, the stories I've read with children, and the conversations that continue to make me think long after those conversations had ended. Linda's little story gently reminds me of something I think I'd begun to forget. Sometimes we are already enough. We already have enough. That doesn't mean I can't enjoy beautiful things, nor does it mean I need to feel guilty for owning them. Perhaps it simply means recognizing when more is no longer adding anything meaningful. Mine doesn't sit beneath the sea like Olli's. It's in the cupboards, bookshelves, drawers, and boxes waiting to be sorted. And I've realised that whenever we make significant changes in our lives, whether that's moving home, changing direction, or simply deciding to live differently, we're faced with the same question: what comes with us? Because not every treasure will. Some things have served their purpose. Some carry happy memories. Some deserve a new home where they'll be useful once again. And perhaps learning to recognise the difference is one of the quiet lessons Linda's story offers us. As I listened to Linda, another thought came to my mind. Here in the UK, broadcaster and mathematics campaigner Carol Vorderman has spent many years encouraging schools to place greater emphasis on practical numeracy and financial literacy. Her argument is that while many of us learned subjects like algebra, trigonometry, many adults reach their later life without ever feeling confident about everyday financial decisions. Whether we agree with every part of her argument or not, I think it raises an interesting question. When should children begin learning about money? Now, Linda's answer surprised me. Not through budgets, not through spreadsheets, not through lectures, but through stories. Because Olli's Cave of Treasure isn't really about money at all. It's about gratitude, choice, patience, value, the difference between wanting something and truly needing it. Linda also mentioned research suggesting that children's attitudes towards money begins forming remarkably early, around the age of 7. That doesn't mean children suddenly become financial experts, far from it. But perhaps those early years are when they are beginning forming beliefs that stay with them for much of their lives. And that thought reminded me of something else in the last podcast series. I spoke about Todd Rose's work and the idea that there's no such thing as average, and therefore there is no such thing as the average child. Children learn at different rates. They grasp ideas quickly. Others need longer. Neither tells us what they will become. Linda saw exactly during her years as an accounting teacher. Linda didn't believe some children simply weren't numbers people. Some needed more encouragement. Some needed more time, and she believed they could learn. I find that enormously hopeful. I've often used the example of the toddler learning to walk. They pull themselves up, they wobble, they fall over, then they get up and they try and try again. Have you ever seen a toddler decide they simply aren't meant to be a walker? Of course not. Yet somehow and somewhere along the way, many of us begin saying things like, I'm just not a maths person. Oh, I'm hopeless with money. I sometimes wonder when those beliefs first started to take root. Perhaps one of the greatest gifts we can give our children is not simply knowledge, but the confidence that they are capable of learning. That it is perfectly acceptable to take a little longer, that everyone learns differently. The world won't stop because one child needs a little more time than another. And perhaps that's where stories have such quiet power. They don't lecture, they don't hurry, they don't compare, and they simply just invite children to think, to notice, to wonder, to return to an idea again and again and again until it begins to make sense. As I've continued sorting through the boxes ready for my move, I've found myself letting go of things I once thought I needed. I rather like knowing that they'll have another life somewhere else. Perhaps they'll be useful again. Perhaps they'll bring someone else joy. And as I've done that, I've found myself saying something I don't think I could honestly have said a few years ago. I have enough. Now, that's not because I have everything. I certainly don't. But I've begun to recognize what matters most. Perhaps that's the quiet gift that's hidden inside Linda's story. It's not really teaching children about money. It's gently helping them discover value. And that may be one of the most valuable lessons of all. So, thank you for joining me on this reflection. Until the next time, This has been Stories from the Mat with Jan, a place to think, notice, and begin. So thank you for joining me. Until the next time, take care.